Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I have a new DIY project for my van. I am going to be redoing the headliner. So I've never done a headliner or anything like this before. I've seen a lot of videos, how-to videos on YouTube, and a lot of videos that recommend taking it somewhere professionally, but I'm trying to save a little bit of money and I'm trying to learn how to do things myself. So I'm going to get started on doing this on my own. So first you're going to have to remove any of the plastic that's holding the headliner in. I do recommend, if you're not sure how to get yours out, look for your specific vehicle on YouTube. I'm sure somebody has made a video. Mine just popped right out and they will line right up and pop back in whenever I'm done. My headliner also had this plastic storage built in. It has two plastic screws on either side that you just pop out with a flathead screwdriver, and it will remove the plastic piece on the front, and the plastic piece on the back will come out once I take the entire headliner out. These plastic pieces are the hooks that hold in the sun visors on the passenger and driver's side. You'll also need to take these out because they have a little plastic piece that goes from the headliner into the metal. There's a little flat piece that you can stick a flathead screwdriver into and pop it right out. If you have these, I definitely recommend to be as ginger as you can be. I did break my flat piece off. I'm not too concerned about it because nobody's really going to be able to see it. My vehicle obviously has very old plastic in it. It was all dry rotted, so my plastic's very easy to break. Regardless if you have an old or a new vehicle, just be as ginger as you can. I also had to remove the screws that were from our sun visor, even though I didn't have one on that side. The cover for my light popped off really easily with a flathead screwdriver, and then I had to get inside of that and remove two more screws that were holding the housing for the lights. So the last thing I had to do was to just take the headliner off. There were little Velcro pieces that were holding it in slightly that I just had to easily pop right off of the metal. And the hardest part of the ordeal was to just get this thing out of the doors because of the size. I didn't have a lot of space. Obviously the headliner is quite larger than the space of the doors, but you can get it out there. You just got to finagle it a little bit. So this is what it looks like completely removed. Whoever was in it before me did smoke in it, so it kind of has that gross musky smell to it, and it's really dirty. And it is starting to peel in the front, so those were the reasons why I wanted to take this out and redo it. While you have this out, this would be a good time to just wipe everything down if it's dirty. I just want to reiterate that I've never done this before. I am just following some of the advice from the YouTube videos that I've watched already. The first thing to do would be to peel off this cloth. It should be fairly easy. If you are replacing your headliner, I assume that it's falling apart. So removing this backing will allow you to get to the foam that's underneath, and that's what we're going to work on next. So the foam and the cloth used to be one piece, but now that the cloth's falling off, this is where you run into having to change the whole liner. I was going to do this by hand with a wire brush, but I saw an even better technique on one of the videos I watched with a wire brush attachment for my drill, and this took maybe 10-15 minutes. I know using a wire brush would take a lot longer and it would be a lot more work. So if you're having to do this, I do recommend using the wire attachment on your drill. And I did sweep up what I could in between because I didn't want to mess in my yard. Make sure that you get it off of all of the corners and any of the sides. Just remember to be gentle, because you can nick this, you can break it if you are running your drill too fast, or if you're just not paying attention to where you are moving with it. So just be careful, but you do need to make sure you get it off of all of the edges and corners, because we are going to be applying glue to attach the new cloth. There were a lot of options on Amazon for headliner glue. I decided to go with this Gorilla Heavy Duty spray glue. I got some small plastic clamps from Harbor Freight. You're going to need something to roll on the fabric with, and then a sharp pair of scissors. And I do want to show you that it does say that it's good for fabric and foam, which is what we're going to be using here. So I ordered this headliner off of Amazon. I will put a link in the description if you're interested. It's just black suede headliner. It's nothing fancy. I just wanted it to match the rest of my interior. You need to lay it out where you're going to want it and make sure that all of your edges are covered. Make sure that there's no big wrinkles in it, because you want it pretty much where it's supposed to go. So the technique here is to glue it in pieces. You don't want to spray the whole thing and then put the fabric on. I'm going to spray one piece at a time really heavily, and I'm going to use my hands to smooth it out, and then use my ruler to really push it down there and make sure everything's flat. You want to make sure that there's no wrinkles, because if you have wrinkles in there, it's just going to stay that way. This glue is heavy duty and it really does stick. It dries very fast. I definitely recommend taking your time on this project. Don't be in a hurry. Pay attention to the fine details. Make sure that you are spraying a lot of the adhesive, but not too much. If you do spray too much, it will puddle and it will soak through your fabric. There were maybe 1 or 2 spots where I did that and I learned my lesson. But you don't want that to come through, because it's going to make your fabric look yucky. Mine actually happened towards the edges, so you're not going to be able to see it unless you're really looking for it while you're in the cab. Here I am spraying the glue around the edges now. I have the headliner where I want it and glued down really good on the main surface of it. So I am spraying the glue, and then I'm tucking the fabric underneath it. I am using my roller to make sure it's pushed down and tight, there's no wrinkles, and I'm also making sure that around where any holes are, that it is glued and pushed down properly, because you don't want any of those pieces to fall out or to be hanging. And we're going to be cutting that in just a little bit here. So right now we're just focusing on making sure that everything is tight, glued properly, and that we have extra hanging over the edges so we're able to trim as needed. So I bought these plastic clamps to hold the fabric onto the edges while it dries. This will make sure that the fabric stays where I need it, and it's going to dry where I need it as well. I'm using my roller constantly to make sure that the fabric is pushed down and wrinkle free. Don't be in a hurry when you do this. Take your time, pay attention to what you're doing, and make sure that you can smooth out any imperfections before the glue dries, because once this stuff dries, it is hard to get off. So now I need to cut holes where there are holes in my headliner, and these will be where the storage area is, where the clips are that hold the headliner in place, and my dome light. To do this, I used my scissors and I cut an X on each of the holes from corner to corner. This will give you a tab on each of the sides of where you are cutting the holes, so you're able to roll the tab back and glue it down. This will make sure that the headliner looks seamless, and it will cover all the areas of your headliner. And while I was pulling these back and gluing them, I used my roller to make sure that the edges were pushed down and wrinkle free, and they were wrapped up pretty tightly to the back of the headboard. Here I'm making sure that all of the fabric all around the headliner is properly glued down with enough glue, and that they are pulled up tightly and they're wrinkle free, so I don't have to worry about this fabric coming undone. Sometime when I was gluing the headliner on, it shifted and there was a little piece of the headliner that was exposed. So with my leftover fabric, I cut a piece to fit the part that was exposed, and I glued it on and pressed down really hard with my ruler to blend it in the best that I can. It doesn't look like it blends in really well here, but this actually lines up with the sun visor on the driver's side, and you can't see it when it's installed. I also painted these pieces black like the rest of the vinyl that I did in the interior. So the last part is to just put everything back in. So I squeezed the headliner back into the door, and I started with putting this storage thing back on the headliner. This was kind of difficult to line it up, and honestly I had to look at the videos that I made earlier in the day to figure out which way it was supposed to go. But pretty much these two screws, there are two holes that line up on the back part of the storage compartment that these screws just pop right into these holes, and there's no bolt or anything on the other side. They just use the pressure of the threads to hold it in. So once you get that lined up, you hurry up and pop those screws in so they don't pop back out. These are pretty simple. The hooks just pop right back into the metal behind the headliner, and then these little pieces that come out from the bottom pop right into their spot. I lined up the Velcro pieces that were on the headliner to the ones that were on the ceiling of the van and popped those into place so the headliner would stay in place while I was doing everything else. All of the vinyl that came out had clips that lined up into the ceiling of the cab, so I just popped all of that back into place where they belonged. The last thing to do is to put the cab light back together. So it's pretty easy to put this back on. It's probably the easiest part of the whole thing. You just screw the bracket on, and then you screw in the white housing, and then lastly you put on the light, which just snaps right on to the white housing, right in each corner. And that's it. As you can see, it came out really great, and it matches the rest of my interior. It is also clean and doesn't stink anymore. Make sure you like and subscribe, and if you would like to keep up with the progress on my van and get more DIY videos, follow me on all of my other social media handles.